Suzanne Alexander, welcome to the show. How you doing today?
Hi, thank you for having me here, honey.
No problem. Thanks to you for coming on.
I just appreciate the time you're giving me, honey. I love watching all the things you're doing on social media. I'm just very proud of you, honey. Thank you.
Thank you. So, for anyone that doesn't know, and I highly recommend going to check out the last few episodes you've done with the Strong Sisters. You have traveled all across the world, Africa, Australia, New Zealand. You're soon hoping to go to Japan,
Yes.
visiting some. How would you describe them? I've called them the last hunter-gatherers, but just indigenous tribes that are as far removed from our reality, our modern reality, as possible.
Absolutely. Yeah. So in like the Pacific Islands, when we were there, they were as remote as I could find, because it's very difficult to find remote tribes anymore because they become so commercialized because of tourism, which is what I'm trying to prevent. I'm trying to educate the world that we need to leave them alone. They want to continue to live ancestrally. And when we have tour guides and things bringing people from the outside in, and they're bringing toxic food, processed food, seed oils, it's affecting them incredibly and so fast. And we can talk about that. And so to find indigenous tribes who are living ancestrally in a remote region is very difficult to do. And I've been very lucky to be able to find them. And then to see those who have left the tribe and to see what happens to them so quickly is shocking. So in the Pacific Island, we visited numerous tribes there. And that was amazing to see, because it's so different than Africa. It's a total tropical, beautiful wonderland there. And but then when you go to Africa, it's extremely difficult. I mean, all the tribes, how they're living is difficult because they have nothing. Everything, their life is spent finding food. And we're so spoiled, it's just, we go to the refrigerator, and we have something. And, but their existence is from the moment they wake up every morning, we have to find food.
All right. So I'm going to ask you a hard hitter from the top. I think, and this is obviously it's a very modern privileged thing to say, because as you said, we can just go to Whole Foods and, buy what they look for in a month. I can just put it on my credit card, right?
Yes.
But the consequence of that is that I think it's Maslow's hierarchy, where we as a modern society have to find our purpose. It's because we have shelter, we have food, we have water, we have all of our big rocks in place, that a lot of people struggle when they should have everything, right? Like, you have a good family, but we find ourselves depressed. And I don't think, from what it seems like, you don't seem to find these mental health issues in the tribes, at least to the frequency that we have. So even though obviously maybe I don't think anyone's trading their Whole Foods down the street to live in the jungle with the Africans, or at least most people. Maybe you would.
I would.
They would probably be very happy to just have a plethora of food nearby. Do you think it is in some sense a blessing that they have to live for the day and have to live to find their food, because they don't have everything at their fingertips like we do?
And we've talked about this. I sit with the tribes, and it's so profound to listen to them. They don't, and some of them have left, and they've come back because they wanted to go and experience, thinking it's going to be so awesome to go and live like the Americans do. And in the nearby cities near them, of course, they call them cities, but they're really little towns, but they've got stores and things that they can buy processed food. And in a short time, their health falls apart and they come back. And Mateo and I have spoken with these people who have come back, and they said they could not believe how fast their health failed, and they would never go back. And I said, the ease of life, having a shower and a toilet, food, and they said, no, it was awful. They said, we miss what we have. And when we sit and we talk with them, and I said, do you ever experience depression? Especially with the Haadza. Now, the Haadza are the last of the hunter and gatherers. And I get very emotional when I talk about the tribes because I love them so much. They're just everything to me. And the Haadza, there's only 800 left in the world. They are monogamous. They have only one wife. Most of the tribes are polygamous, and so therefore they can have multiple wives and multiple children. Some of, like Mateo, his dad has 4 wives and 32 children. So think how far his DNA, I saw that look. Think how far his DNA will go. But think how that if every man in the Maasai is having multiple children, then they're going to have longevity in their tribe. Less of a chance of becoming extinct. And I'm not saying I think it's well to have a polygamy. That would be difficult for me as an American. I don't know, but yeah, it works for them. And to see how the women of so say Mateo's dad has 4 wives. Those 4 wives, they are so close, as if they're sisters. How they protect each other, they help each other raise the children. When one is pregnant, they help when she's pregnant, and they help when she has birth. They help with the babies. I've never seen such love in my life. And so it's a whole different concept. But going back to the Haadza, so there's only 800 left. 400 of those Haadza are now living in the cities. There's only 400 remaining living ancestrally. So it's soon they're going to be gone. They will become extinct. And my fear is this can't happen, because the wisdom that they live so differently than the pastoralists, which would be the Maasai, the Datoga. There's a lot of them. The pastoralists are the ones who have livestock. So their food is their milk and their meat and the blood and plants. They do have plants that they consume. But the Haadza, they literally just hunt with bow and arrows. There's no guns, and they have to go out and find. The only problem that's happening now with the Haadza and all the tribes, the government has taken away so much of their land. And so now they're all sharing. So what used to be the Haadza hunting land, they're now sharing with pastoralists. And so I know when we were out hunting, we're out there running around trying to look for animals, but you can hear the bells from the cattle and the donkeys and the sheep and the goats, and they're all walking around, what is it doing to the wild animals? It's scaring them away. And so they're hunting. That day that we were hunting for, I don't know how many hours, we walked like 15 miles and we got a tiny little bird. There was nothing. We could see tracks of like an antelope and maybe some hyena, but they don't eat hyena anyway. But there was nothing. And so we just had the little bird out in the bush. We just kind of cooked it, and it was just little slim pickings. But when we got back home to the village, the Haadza village, the women had gone, and of course they collected their tubers and their greens. And sometimes they will look for rats and moles and rodents, and they'll bring those back. But they didn't have a successful day that we were there. And so I went and purchased a lamb for them from another tribe to bring it back, so we had food. It's so stressful, and yet those who have gone and come back, they would never do it again. And those who have never left don't want to. They said, we love our life. I said, do you ever experience depression? No, why? We love how we live. We have nothing to worry about. I said, you don't worry about food? And this is the Haadza. They said, we always have food. It doesn't have to be meat. Meat would be our preference. But we've always got tubers. We've always got greens. We have seasonal fruit. And they said, we love our life. We wouldn't change it. So it's an interesting concept, because it is so difficult. It is long days, and but they don't have. When I was there, I was hungry, but we always had food. I kept bringing meat in for myself, because I eat a lot of meat, and for my boys, my team that was with me. But they really don't eat a lot of food. They really don't. And I think those of us who keep thinking that the hunters and gatherers, it's got massive amounts. It's not. It is not. And even if they had their land. And I asked them this. I said, even if you had your land without the pastoralists living on it, were you getting meat every day? They said, no. It's not a daily thing. When you do, it's great. Of course, their favorite meat is baboon, the hind end of a baboon of all things, and the brain. Okay. I was like, oh, that's not an attractive picture of a thought. You ever seen a baboon? It's like, oh, yeah. So, but that's their favorite region to eat. But I think where they are now, I think that they've hunted out a lot of the baboons in their area. But yeah,
so you actually covered the question I was going to ask, which is if they historically had more food when they had more land. But it seems like they were never just had a plethora of food at their disposal.
Well, they've always, and I said, are the tubers, that's their big thing, the tubers, because they're there 365 days a year. They're not seasonal. They've always got them. And there's so much nutrients that they said. There's so much and I tried them, especially the ones that you just chew on and you spit them out. I could not believe how many minerals I knew I was getting from that. And there's so much water, the moisture that's in them. They're getting so much out of them. But then they also cook certain ones, or some they can just eat like a potato, but that isn't cooked. And they thrive on those. They're doing really well. The baobab fruit, which is seasonal. It's not every day. So those people who think they're having the baobab fruit every day, it's not. It's seasonal, but it's probably 8 months that they can have that. And then they've got the wild plum, and that's seasonal as well. And I've got videos of it, and it looks very much like a cherry tomato, and it is extremely bitter and sour. I mean, it would not be something I would run to, but you can tell that, and this is really important too, Tay, that this is so important, Tay, is that all of them, including the Maasai, that everyone does not think that they have plants in their life. And I just posted a really incredible video of one of the slaughtering camps at the Maasai that shows the plants that are so important. And I wrote about this along with it to show that this is something, especially in the carnivore community, that they really need to hear. The plants from all the tribes, and this includes indigenous all over the world for generations and generations, thousands of, way back to the Neanderthals, that they've been using plants. It's been proven scientifically. I'm not just talking off the top. I'm a researcher. Off the top of my head is that these plants are vital to the existence of humans. Without them, we wouldn't have survived because they were the thing. They're medicinal. You know, when you're ingesting all of these meats, you're getting parasites, you're getting bacteria, you're getting virus, you're getting all of these things, and these plants are healing them. And in the Maasai swear, I mean, they're just like, we can't live without these, especially their barks and the branches. And they lower cholesterol, LDL, they diabetes, they prevent so many things that those who are carnivores and are not consuming these things. My question is, what if we don't have these in our diet, these bitters and all these things and these plants that have these amazing properties that can lower our cholesterol, lower the LDL, prevent diabetes? Because in research that's been done with the Maasai when they were in their warrior period, that's when they're ages 15 to 30, and they go to their big slaughtering camp. They're usually 3 to 4 weeks long, and they are just ingesting so much meat and fat. When tests were done, and I'm hoping I can do this with Mateo this summer, I can take a lab with me and do the same, replicate the same testing that was done by this other group of scientists. Half of the men in the camp became diabetic during that period because the protein made them, I mean, it wasn't just pre-diabetes, they went into a diabetic state. And so we have to understand that sometimes too much, you know, you can overdo, and it was proven in that it's amazing. I'm going to be coming out with all these things in papers. It's remarkable when we look at this. And so when we're preaching on social media that, oh, this is the ultimate diet, the point is that's not fact. Because if it's the ultimate diet, then we wouldn't need to have all of these plants that all of these tribes, and if you look at my live Instagrams, you can hear all the elders and all of them saying, we can't live without these plants. We have to. They're keeping us alive. They're vital to us. And when I research all of these plants, I've got all the names and I'm looking at them, and they've all been researched very carefully. And it shows exactly they can prevent malaria. I mean, think of the deaths that you would get. I mean, just when I was there, I was covered in I have pictures just covered with nothing but mosquito bites. And that's where I kept thinking, am I going to get malaria? But I was drinking their soups all the time and having their chai teas every morning, which is made with these special barks and these special plants and herbs that prevent these things. And I mean, I think had I not been drinking and eating from their ancestral food, I probably would have been very sick. I did not get worms. I was eating all their raw meats and everything that they were, whatever. I was just taking it in there. And I felt fabulous. I felt so good. And so we need to think of these things. So just stay tuned. I'm going to be coming out with a lot of information. And Ty, again, I thank you for this opportunity to share this. Thank you, honey.
No problem. You know how people say they go to like Italy and they're eating all like the crap that they do in America and they feel really good? You just did that like times 10. You go
Yeah,
on
yeah.
eating like the bark.
Yeah, it's so profound. It is just, and you're drinking the blood, and and they don't use spices. I mean, the spices are their plants that they're using. There's this, the Maasai don't use salt, of course, because the blood is loaded. It's like drinking saline. It's just loaded with salt. But that's not every day. Blood is not consumed every day by the Maasai. And everyone thinks that they're doing the jugular and they're pouring it into the milk. That's only during the summer when they're grazing cattle, can't produce enough milk because it's so dry. They aren't getting enough grass to eat and they can't produce it. So they mix the blood to make it go further, and that's the only reason why. But most of the time they're not. And when we do the slaughtering camp, the regular slaughtering camp, because there's a big slaughtering camp for the warriors, and then there's the regular slaughtering camp for the village, and that's like maybe two to three times tops a week, and they're not doing the cows. The cows are only slaughtered at the big warrior camp or at celebrations like circumcisions or weddings and things like that. Most of the time, it's just a small sheep or a goat, and that will feed the entire tribe, which isn't a lot. It's not a lot. So they're not gorging on pounds and pounds and pounds and pounds of meat like everyone thinks. That would be the big slaughtering camp for the warriors, but it's not a daily thing.
You mentioned that the warriors are going diabetic, potentially at least when they're
During that
in.
time. Yeah.
Do they look like? Would you from because you can kind of tell when an American is diabetic. So are they gaining a lot of muscle? Do you think it could actually be advantageous in them in terms of the muscle growth benefits from all
Well,
this protein?
it's funny because when they saw all the tribes and they saw me, well, first of all, I look so different, because they're not seeing white people walking around because they're so remote, and they aren't used to seeing a woman, because usually it's men that would be coming, but especially to see a woman who's got really long hair. They were totally baffled by my hair. They're baffled by my green eyes and my muscles because I'm a bodybuilder and I work out like that. And they were like, "What is this? What is all of this?" And they were touching and "What is all?" And I said, "It's muscles," because they're very lean. All the tribes are very lean and thin, and they aren't muscular. And because they're not out, they're not doing what you do. So I had explained to them what I do, and they're like, "Why? What's the point?" And so I showed them pictures of bodybuilders, men, and they're like, "Ew, ew." What is this? They did not like that. They thought, "What is the point?" And I said, "Well, what do you suggest?" And they're just like, "Walk. Humans are designed to walk." They said, "What you're doing is you're going to injure your body." And they're so about protecting their body. It's the only one that they've got. And this means everything to them. And so I think that the warriors, when they go to this slaughtering camp, they don't realize that only half of them. So say 20 of the warriors go, half of them became diabetic. But as soon as they leave, that goes away. It's just at that period where they're just gorging on so much that they normally wouldn't have. And so it does go away. And when I was there and I was testing their blood, I was doing testing all of their blood when I was there. It was stellar. I mean, they were just pristine. And now, ugali, let's talk about ugali. Ugali is now being introduced to these tribes. Ugali is corn flour. Corn has been made into a flour, and they mix it with water. It's been used in cultures for thousands and thousands of years. The only problem is there's a couple things here. Certain cultures, they've been using it, and so their DNA have acclimated. They've adapted. It's also probably heirloom corn that has not been genetically modified. It does not have pesticides and all of these things all over. It hasn't been tainted. Now we go to the tribes in Africa. Many of them have not had. So the tribes I go to, they live mostly on meat and hunting and gathering. They're not the ones that would be living on they're not agricultural. There's agricultural pastoralists and hunters and gatherers. So when you've got these tribes like the Datoga, the Maasai, and the Haadza, they have never had grains before, and now they're adding them in, their health is failing. And yet, as I said, other people who have been eating ugali for thousands of years thrive. I don't know how well, because when I look at the Haadza and the Datoga and the Maasai who live ancestrally, they're pristine. If one day you will go And you just are in awe. I mean, yes, they're not muscular, but they are fit. And what they have to do every day, I had some people mentioning on posts I put out, and they were just saying, yeah, but but they don't work out. They aren't using the kind of calories that, it was something I posted. And I said, oh, you are so wrong. They don't need a gym. I said, their daily life is a gym. They're walking, 12, 15, 20 miles a day. They are lifting 100, 200 pounds of wood, carrying either on their head or their back, carrying it for miles. They're carrying huge jugs of water for miles. And this is every day. It doesn't stop. That's how they work out. They don't need to. They don't have time to. They don't need to. They're so pristine in their health. The elders in their 90s and 100s time, I was just, it would bring me to tears. I mean, and I've got live Instagrams with them where you could see them. Their teeth, all of them, they are just gorgeous. It's like they should do toothpaste commercials because they've never been to the dentist. And they use things like this. This is, I say it, this is my stick. And I've got a whole bunch that I brought back that Mateo cut for me. This is how they brush their teeth. And
Is it a bone or it's a stick?
No, this is a stick from a tree. Okay. And it's called the Persica. I never can remember it. Well, it's I'll post it once we post this one. I'll put it underneath it. But it's amazing because it actually has been tested again, and it has got antimicrobial, antibacterial, anti-cavity, you name it. It's got it going on, and they use this constantly. You always look over, and they even make it to like a toothpick at the back. And they're constantly, cleaning their teeth, or they've got a leaf from something, and they're cleaning. It's the taking care of this temple that they've been blessed with. But their teeth are pristine. And I've got pictures and videos where you can see my camera. I'm going into their mouth. Mm-hmm. The Haadza, they're laughing. I'm going, open your mouth. And I'm going into their mouths. There's no cavities. They're absolutely gorgeous. And their jaws are as strong. I mean, they're biting through bones and ligaments and tendons and things that I'm just trying so hard to it's taking me like 15 minutes to get through one piece, and they would do it in 10 seconds. Their jaws are so strong, and they're strong. They may not have muscle. The strength of these women. I mean, I had broken my arm when I was there, and I didn't tell anyone. So I kind of was like not able to do too much. I didn't want anyone to know, but I was trying so hard to do everything they were doing. When we went out to chop wood, I mean, it was hours. It took us, a long time to get there. And then they're chopping and chopping. I have videos of all this, and they're just so pristine with these axes that they're using. And of course, the Datoga tribe, the blacksmiths make the axe heads for them. They all work together to help each other. It's beautiful. And then they pick these massive, and I'm telling you, it had to be at least 150 pounds, if not more, of wood that they're just lifting. No one's helping them. These women by themselves are lifting it, and they've got these. They wrap the leather from the hides of the animals around it, and then it hangs off of their head and over their back. And these things are massive, and they're so heavy, and we're carrying this for miles, to get back home to make fires for their food and so forth. And this is every day. And then they've got to get water, and that's miles away.
You would think they'd have a decent amount of muscle mass just from doing that.
I thought no, I think it's because it's just not like how the repetition we do. That's what builds ours. It's not repetition. It's because they do it and then they go home, and it's just not a lot of lifting it. Now, if they're carrying it like this in their arms, I think it'd be different, if they're like this carrying it, but they've got on their backs or their heads. And I tell you, but their necks and their legs are just extremely strong. And the men, they're tending out all day long, is walking with their cattle and so forth. It's a remarkable life. And again, here's another interesting thing. I know it's probably too much information. Going to the bathroom. If you plan on you ever want to go and live with a tribe, you have to know how to squat. You really got to know how to squat, a complete flat foot squat, because that's what your bathroom is. And I've got pictures of, I had a little stainless steel pan that Meneno, who is my chef, he would fill every morning with warm water. And then I had my little toilet paper that I would go out into the bush by myself, find a place. Hopefully no one else is going to be out there using the bush too. And you have to squat, and you have to go to the bathroom. And if you can't squat, I don't know what you're going to do, because that's what you would your bathroom in. And I said to the men who are in their 90s, 100s, and the ladies, and I said, they couldn't believe I was asking the question, but I'm a researcher, I have to know. I said, can you still squat? Now think of people you know in their 80s, 90s, 100s, even their 70s. How many of them can drop into a complete squat? Probably
Zero.
not many. And every single one of them laughed at me. Well, of course we can. And I said, without any help. No, this is what we do. So it gives you a whole perspective on what humans are designed to do. This is what being a human is. And I really suggest, and I have videos, I teach people how to do a squat because many people can't. Even children, once they turn 5 years old, if they have not been squatting, they lose it because their Achilles tendon shrinks up because we're so used to sitting in our comfy little chairs. It's so not human. I just have chairs here just when company come. I don't usually sit in a chair. I've got a squatting bench that I squat on here at my computer. I eat on I squat on the floor. But I've been doing this most of my life because that's how I am. It's so comfortable. And once you get used to it, it is the most unbelievable feeling to just be, your whole body just comes alive when you're squatting. And so everyone, I suggest, I know it sounds extreme, but it's not. This is part of health. And if you can squat, it does indicate, and testing again has been done, longevity. And so it's just something to think about. Squatting is vital. I can't imagine not having that.
So you're squatting right now?
Yeah.
That's impressive. Would not have known. This is the third podcast I've seen with you. I had no idea you were not in the chair. That is super funny. All right, here's a kind of a funny question for you that I've wondered about for a very long time. Humans are obviously the only animals in the entire animal kingdom that use toilet paper. And this is kind of being facetious, kind of joking, but have you ever heard of the ghost wipe? So it's when you when you poop and you don't have to wipe, like you wipe and you're done.
Yeah, it's clean. Clean.
Yeah. Is that the norm there? Because that's what I would imagine. If you have pretty good gut health, you would very rarely need to wipe.
Okay. They use leaves. But it's funny, we talked about these things. Mm-hmm. I'd say, well, how? And I said that to Ash and Sarah, the Strong Sisters. I said, honey, we got to talk about the bathroom thing. Oh my gosh, yes, but we haven't talked about it yet. But anyway, okay, so we'll talk about it with you. Are you okay talking about this, honey?
Oh, I'm okay.
Because I have celiac disease. And so anyone who has celiac, that we struggle going to the bathroom. And anyway, so but now that I've added dairy back in to my diet, thanks Ash and Sarah and the Massai for teaching me this. It's profound. It is profound in how I'm now evacuating each day. It's just I'm almost looking normal, which is like a first for me in my whole life. When I was carnivore, forget it. When I was vegan, forget it. But adding the milk in, it's a whole. But it's raw milk, raw sheep. I do sheep. The chief of the Maasai and I, that's our favorite is the sheep. It's only one. That's our favorite is the raw sheep. But anyway, so I said to them, and because they all knew I was struggling. Here I'm going out to bush, and I'm struggling out there. I've got my roll of toilet paper, and I wanted to use the leaves, but because I'm so sensitive to so many things, including many plants. Mateo, he's like my son, he was my lead guide. He said, maybe this isn't the time for you to try to use leaves because you've got so many other things going on in your skin. I was having so many reactions to so many bugs and things there. He said, let's do that the next time you come. We'll try the leaves. But I said, well, especially with Mateo, he and I could talk about anything. I said, honey, so when you go, is it loose? Is it loose like mine? And he's like, no. I said, it's not. I said, so it's like the log? And he goes, yeah. And I said, well, what color is it? Because now everyone who's is a researcher, it does matter. You can tell the health of you by the color of your urine and the feces. And so you should always look when you go to the bathroom, look to see. It should be more like when you go to urinate, it should be more like a hay color, not totally clear and not really, really yellow. Because that shows hydration and how you're absorbing. And also, if it's foaming, it could be that you're probably taking in maybe too much protein, and that's showing that you're struggling in terms of evacuating how your body's trying to deal with protein content. For the fecal matter, if it's loose, you're probably having a hard time either with fat digestion or plant digestion. If it's little pellets, again, hydration. If it's white, now this is what was interesting. Because when I was pure carnivore, mine was coming out very much white. And I was thinking, oh my gosh, because I was eating so much suet. I was eating so much fat. It was just like I was gobbling down the fat. And that's part of my polymorphisms. I don't do well with fat. We'll talk about polymorphisms too if we have time. And I thought, oh my gosh, there's something wrong. It's something wrong. I shouldn't be having white. But Mateo told me because the Maasai drink mostly milk. That's mostly their diet is raw milk. And he said, and the days that we have the milk, he said, it will almost be white. I said, so that's okay? He goes, yeah, that's very normal. And I said, oh, so it was like an aha moment that when I see the lighter color, because we've always been told, oh, it shouldn't be that. But in ancestral populations, if you're consuming high fat, which is the Maasai diet, extremely high fat, especially with the milk, it will be more of a white color. So that's okay. But no, they rarely don't. But then, now this is really probably too much information, but this is what happened. I'm with the Sando tribe.
Okay.
Now, the Sando tribe, what we thought that they replicated what the Maasai do because they look very much like the Maasai. I didn't find them as tall as the Maasai, but they dress like the Maasai. They want to be pastoralists, but they're also agro-pastoralists because they grow a lot of fruit and a lot of the grains. And that's where a lot of the other tribes are getting their fruit and things from. So we go and we're living with the Sando tribe. And there's not a lot of older people. The oldest people are like my age, and they're 60. And I'm thinking, okay, this isn't looking good. And they were having a hard time with their health. And one of the older men who my age was struggling with a knee problem. It had been for a year, and he was struggling. But anyway, so I'm talking with one of the girls. Her name is Miriam. Darling girl. She's 25. She's been married for 2 years. And we camped out near her home. And so my tent was near her hut. And so when I have to go to the bathroom, I'm kind of going out in her neck of the woods where she would be going and so forth, and her family and everything. So I'm out there. I do my thing. I'm coming back, and I see that someone else has gone to the bathroom. And it's loose, looking very much like mine, looking very much like someone who's got a digestive problem. And I went back and I said to Mateo, I said, honey, I explained what I saw. And I said, someone's got a digestive problem here, and they're eating ancestrally. So we were asking them. That's why I really started delving in, because we had just kind of gotten there. I hadn't had time to ask them. So we're saying, what is it that you guys are eating here? It was hardly no meat and hardly no milk. They were consuming mostly plant diet. And so my aha moment was, they're like what I was when I was vegan. It's like, it's kind of tough to have a really good solid mass coming out of you. And so I thought that was kind of profound. I was actually able to see a specimen right there. Now, I wish I could have taken a sample because that's one of my dreams, is to go and take samples of all of the different tribes, to test their urine and test their fecal matter and, of course, their blood and everything. There's so much I want to do. But again, it's millions of dollars. So I'm trying to find a way I can raise that and be able to accomplish all of these tasks to teach us what really is prime health and what our foods are that we need. I'll stop here.
So when you go and visit these tribes, and assuming you're able to test their blood and fecal matter, urine, whatever it is, what are the main tests you're looking for? Like what and what data you're looking to extract from that?
There's so much, especially to me, the gut microbiome. That's been something that has been talked about. I mean, I even go back to when I was 5 years old. My grandmother was living with the tribes. That's where I started. I started researching when I was 5. And my father was an animal rehabilitationist, and which means we raised wild animals, and we would put them back into their habitats once they were healed, or usually it was little babies we would get that were just first born and their mothers had been killed. And so we'd raise them and take them out once they were old enough to live. But anyway, between my grandmother living with African tribes and living, basically my siblings were animals, especially raccoons and skunks and fox and deer. But anyway, and I remember my grandmother, she's Native American, so I'm part Native American, and she would always say to me when we would go outside, and this is before we even knew, this is how smart the tribes are. And we would go out in her garden and we'd be picking things from the garden. And she'd say, eat the dirt. There's really good germs that you need. I was like, so I would be eating the dirt, literally eating the dirt, because it's my grandmother. Oh my gosh, she's the smartest woman in the world. And now fast forward, the tribes already knew this. And now we're finding, oh my goodness, there's just trillions and trillions of these microbes that are living in our body that we need that promote. So I would love to. Now, the Haadza are the known tribe in the world who have the most unbelievable gut microbiome. It is so diverse, more than any other tribe. And they're saying it's because of plants that they eat. I disagree. I disagree. Because when you're really there and you're living what they're living, it's not just the plants. They're drinking out of mud puddles. They're drinking out of anything that they can find. And they're not getting sick. Their knives, and this goes for all the tribes, they don't drink out of mud puddles, but the Hadzabi will. And they will take their knives and they're never washing. Nothing gets washed. There's not a lot of water. And they'll slaughter an animal. And then if the dog is there, the dog might lick off of it or wipe on the dog or whatever. And everything's cut on dirt. And it's just, it's not pristine clean. We're so used to washing and cleaning. They're just consuming. And they're breathing in, and they're around fecal matter when they're slaughtering. And you've got the large intestine, you're cutting into the animal feces and all of this. They're breathing it, they're touching it, they're probably ingesting it, and they're not sick. But again, it's the plants that are keeping them alive. But these are the things that help to proliferate their gut microbiome. And I'm not saying everyone we should go out and do this, but I collect spring water, and I have people always asking me, "But aren't you afraid to get sick?" I said, no, I've been drinking this water for over 20 years. And this is what we're designed to do. It doesn't mean to go and drink out of a toxic, polluted, but if it's natural.
Don't drink your swimming pool.
Yeah, or things that have, these awful power plants, all these things that are just dumping in. Of course, hopefully we've stopped that with all of our laws and so forth. But, places where the farms may be leaching, their pesticides into, but where I go, it's an aquifer. It's way deep down inside the earth, and it's far, far away from any kind of farmland or anything that be polluting it. But I have had people that do get sick
from drinking water
because they're not healthy, but no, it's very few have gotten sick on that water. And to me, I think that's probably why when I travel, I've been very lucky to not become extremely sick. Yes, I get a lot of diarrhea, but that's just because I'm eating. I eat someone else's real food. Like if we go to a restaurant and I beg them, please don't use this, and this, and they don't listen, and they put that in, I'm sunk. I can't handle it. When we were in the Pacific Islands, I'm allergic to coconut, and everything in the Pacific Islands has coconut. Not coconut oil. They do not use coconut oil. They put that on their skin. They don't cook with coconut oil, people. They cook with coconut milk and coconut cream, and they make that fresh themselves. And but everything I was eating had coconut in it. And I kept saying, I went with Dr. Kenobi to that expedition. And I said, no matter what they give me, I will take, even though I know I'm going to have a problem with it. I want to live traditionally with them. And so I did have problems. But in Africa, I didn't, because most of the food was meat and milk and blood and things like that. And so it was quite lovely. Mm-hmm. I thrived. Yeah.
There's a documentary that came out recently about the microbiome. I haven't actually seen it, but I've been told about it. I don't know if you've seen it. It came out on Netflix. But their idea is basically like you just need to eat as many plants and let's assume like you want to eat basically as many foods as possible, just a very diverse array. And I don't necessarily think you would disagree with that, but and this is in order to get a healthy microbiome. But you seem to think it's a lot more multifactorial, and that maybe like just having a huge diversity of food isn't that important. It's more just probably eating things that work well for you, and then living in the dirt.
Yeah, living as we have. If we live like humans, then our body functions like a human. Now we've got a lot of things going against us here, and this is what I believe with all my heart and soul because I've experienced it when I was there. So I listen to my body. I'm so in tune to my body. I think EMFs, and people think this is but it's true for me. I'm extremely hypersensitive to EMFs, and so I have everything hardwired in my house. I don't use Wi-Fi. And if I have my phone, usually it's in, sleep mode. It's not, I don't have it near me. If I even have it on, so I don't want to touch it because it literally burns my hands. I will get literally burns on my fingers if I touch my phone. That's how sensitive I am. And when I'm with the tribes, there's no EMFs because we're so out in the bush. There's no cell towers, and it's beautiful because you feel so at peace. It's like, I'm not racing. My body's not racing. And that's one thing. I think that's destructive to our entire being, to our cells, our gut microbiome. Also, their food is not tainted. Their food is ancestrally raised. It's in rich soil. Their animals are eating only from the soil. They're not given even their chickens. So everyone who believes that their chickens have to be fed, a supplemental feed, They're wrong. And these people are experts at raising all these animals. Nothing. These animals are pristine, and all they do is live off of what's out there in the bush, including the chickens. The only thing that they will give the chickens is they put out this is the Maasai. They put out a thing of water with aloe vera plants in it, or they just put the aloe vera plant, and the chickens know to eat this when they need it, and it heals them from whatever ailments are happening. And they're so beautiful. They're roaming everywhere. They're in their huts, and they just live with, the animals live in the huts with the people. It's so beautiful. Everyone, they're one with nature. And so their gut microbiome is so diverse. And I believe this with all the tribes, even though the Haadza have the most diverse, but I think they all have diverse. And when you look at the Maasai, yes, most of their diet is meat and mostly milk. It's mostly raw milk. And the key is it's raw. Think about it's ferment, and they ferment everything. Fermenting. We think about the Okinawans and the Japanese and the Chinese, that they're all into fermenting. All of the tribes, well, the Haadza, I can't really say they don't do a lot of fermenting. They don't. But of all the other tribes, they're fermenting. They're fermenting something. And especially the Maasai, they call it clot milk or soured milk. And they'll take their milk, and I do that. I've got my milk sitting out right now, and it's souring. And they sit it out. It could be a day, it could be 4 or 5 days. They put it in their calabash, and they put it away, and it sours. And this is the most healing. Think of the bacteria that's in that alone. I mean, it's a plethora of what they're ingesting. And so again, if we eat and live ancestrally, our body will have everything we need. But if we're eating food that has toxins on them, plants that have been pesticide laden, and we're not eating, and we're eating all this processed food, our body doesn't even recognize it. What is it? This isn't even food. We're going to suffer. If we're not getting enough sleep, their sleep is so important to them. When the sun goes down, they sit around their fire. It's very peaceful. There's no lights anywhere. It's so beautiful. It's like, oh my gosh, I felt so, every morning I was like, oh, it's so beautiful here. And when the sun is coming up, they come out of their huts. I unzip my tent. I'm coming out, crawling out, and it's just so, the sun is rising, and you're seeing that, you're resetting your circadian rhythm. And at nighttime, as it's setting, again, you're resetting, and you're just in the sun and fresh air. And it's just, and of course, you're around your animals, and they've got their gut microbiome, and you're getting all of that from them. It's ancestral, but we don't. So think about, when you're listening to this, think about your life. It's not saying, I'm not trying to be, I'm a fanatic about it. This is how I live. I'm out, and I will. In the morning, the sun is coming up, I'm out there, and I'm doing my exercise, and I'm laying on the ground, breathing in the dirt. I sometimes I'll be eating it. I'll rub it on my face, and I want to be dirty, and it's profound. It is so profound. And I think that we need to get back to that, if at all possible. Let your children play in the dirt. And the children alone, that's a whole nother topic. If the children tie, it's remarkable.
So what is the most valuable lesson that you think we could extract back into our society from all of these tribes?
Getting back to being as human as possible, spending more time outside in sunshine, in fresh air, walking. It is not about lifting. I will say, I love to lift. I love that for me, but they do lift. So do something. Instead of hiring someone to do your yard work, do your own yard work. Get out there. I say Monday is my mowing day, and I live on a hill, and it's hours of me just pushing my mower up and down the hill. I feel so good because it's a workout. It's a whole body workout, and so I look forward to that. So tend to your land. Family is so important to them. Tribe is so important. I could not believe, and this is what we're missing. Another thing too tight in our world is every person was valuable. Every person knew they were loved. You are never alone. You will never eat alone. And they feel that that's the worst thing you can do. And I looked at their elders. The elders are so revered. They are never put away. They don't need to. They're still working until the day they take their last breath. And they usually die in their sleep. For anyone who thinks that they have short lives, no, they don't. No, they don't. Watch my videos. You will see how pristine they are. And they are, and again, so they're tending to their land. They're outside every day, moving. They're not sitting. They're not in front of a screen. They're not around EMFs and toxic, pesticides. They're eating from the land. They're eating naturally. They don't do a lot of, preparation. It's not they usually boil their meat or they slowly cook it. Um, I think a lot of people talk about the carnivore being so dry and having to drink so much water and so forth. The Maasai said that's why they boil it, because it keeps the moisture in their meat. And I've always boiled my meat. I'm not thirsty. No wonder. And they said, oh no, when you cook it over the fire, that's when it gets dry, and then you have to drink a lot. So that's again from the men, the tribe who knows meat. Boil the meat, and if you're going to cook it, slow cook it, not near the fire too much, where it over dries it out, and that's going to make you thirsty. You got to drink so much. But again, so takeaways: eat from the earth, eat. I know. Did you just see that time?
Yeah.
I don't know why it does that, but you can delete that. But anyway, so you want to eat ancestrally as possible. Veganism. I will say that the tribe, I did live with a tribe in Pacific Islands who ate mostly sweet potatoes, very little bit of animal products, maybe a little bit of pork and chicken once or twice a month. They weren't as pristine as the tribes who had more meat. So at least 50%, 40, 50% of their diet would be meat, and then plants if they want. They were more pristine. But anyway, so eat ancestrally with as little toxins and plant chemicals as possible in terms of pesticides. Daily moving, if you can, just walk to work, or during your lunch walk. Get up in your when you're working, stand up, do jumping jacks, whatever you can. Just walk. I've been talking about this. Have your meetings outside. Change your workplace. Teachers in schools, get your children. I had my students were squatting all the time. We were always squatting when I would teach, or I had them, we'd be dancing and we'd skip down the hallway. I was always breaking the rules, but I didn't care. Take them outside and play. Teach your classes outside. Take the children outside and teach them outside. Again, family, tribe, they care for each other. No one ever feels that they don't matter. There's no depression. There's no suicide. None of that exists. They are so at peace. It's remarkable. So.
One of the things that really piqued my interest is you mentioned that the Maasai, I think, are polygamous, and the Haadza are one of the only non-polygamous.
One of the very few. Yeah, there's very few. Most are polygamous.
So Mateo, who was for anyone who doesn't know, is your travel guide, basically, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
He's a member of the Maasai. Did you ever just discuss why, like when you were with the Haadza, like why one was monogamous and why one was polyamorous?
It's just their belief system. There are some Haadza who might take another wife, but rarely, because I asked them that question. You can see the videos. I asked all these questions, so you can hear them saying these things. And I said, well, do you ever, did any of them? And they said, there are some, but most of us, and this is from the chief of the Haadza, he said, most of us will only have one wife. Most of us. And again, it's just their choosing. It's their way of living. But think about this. They are pastoralists. They don't have huge flocks to take care of. And so when you're pastoralists, think about this, they need help. They need a lot of children to go help tend to these flocks. And if you could see these little 3, 4, 5-year-old little boys with their spears in their hand, going out all by themselves, where there's lions and leopards and all, hyenas out there, and they're going by themselves to tend to these flocks by themselves. It's remarkable to see. But they don't have that responsibility when you're just a hunter-gatherer. They get up, they go hunting, the men go hunting, and the women do their gathering, but they hunt for rodents. The women are hunters as well. They do hunt for rodents. But so I don't think that they had that need to have multiple children. But now when I see it, though, they're becoming extinct because there's so few of them. I don't know. It's so sad, so heart-wrenching.
Yeah. You were talking about their sleep as well, and I was just curious: are they sleeping 8 hours a night, or 9 hours a day, or 6 hours?
Oh, I would say 8, and their beds. I have a video of showing what their beds are like. I sleep very much like them. They do not use pillows, and we wonder why we have back problems. Okay, I stopped using a pillow about 10 years ago. I have scoliosis, which is curvature of the spine, and I would wake up. Just wake up in such pain all the time. Oh my golly, this just isn't right. I work out. I'm doing everything right. Why am I in such pain? Well, I know I have scoliosis, but so then the more I kept studying and researching my tribes all the time, they don't use pillows. I thought they've got to know. So I took my pillow out, and it was a game changer for my body, how I sleep. So they don't use a pillow. They sleep on very hard surfaces. The Hadzabi sleep on the ground. Okay, they might have a little blanket they sleep on, but they're on the ground in their little huts. Or sometimes they just sleep outside. Like when we were there, the Hadzabi was so beautiful. They slept out near where Mateo's what do you call it? What's the big safari vehicle that they have? I can never remember what it's called, but it's this beautiful safari vehicle, and they wanted to protect it. So they were sleeping on the ground, just protecting it at nighttime. It was so adorable. But then the Maasai and the other tribes, they build out of sticks, kind of like a little platform. And then on that, they'll put a thin piece of hide. It's very hard. It's not soft, very, very hard. And or they'll weave plants that they'll make a mat out of. And that's all they sleep on. It's very, very hard. It is not soft. So my bed is the same way, except it's not out of twigs, but it's a piece of very organic, hard rubber. It's extremely hard and it's very thin. And that's what I sleep on. And when I was there, I just slept on a very thin little mat on the ground in my tent without my pillow or just in a sleeping bag. And it was just, it was so beautiful. It was so beautiful. So their sleep is important to them. But they drink milk before they go to bed. Many of them, if you're a pastoralist, and that helps them to sleep. Yes, sleep is very, very important to them. And again, rising with the sun and relaxing and bringing it down as the sunset. It's completely dark. I mean, it is pitch black when you're there, and their night vision time. I couldn't talk about seeing, and this is even the elders, and they don't wear glasses, they don't have hearing aids. There's no canes, there's no walkers, there's no wheelchairs. They're so pristine. It's pitch black. There's not a light anywhere, just a little flickering from a fire maybe. But if you're far away, you can't see a thing. And there's rocks and who knows what you're going to step on. I have to use my cell phone flashlight because I can't see a thing. I'm tripping. They can see. They perfectly can see. I'm following Mateo and I'm like, honey, aren't you going to fall? He goes, no, I can see everything. And it's pitch black. So their vision it's like an animal. And because we are animals, but because of how we live, we don't function as humans are supposed to. And so we need to and I don't know how we can do this, but to really turn off our lights, get off our all of this social media and everything, turn it off early. I have my glasses that I put on at nighttime because I'm working till late at night researching. So I've got my special blue blocker glasses and it makes a difference. But boy, when I was there, I can't tell you the difference in my sleep because I normally don't sleep well. The peace that I was at was unbelievable, unbelievable.
I'd also imagine after 15 miles of walking, you're ready to pass out.
And it's true because you're working, you're carrying this huge amounts of wood on your back and all this water, and I felt so alive, so alive. And think about it, guys. When you're looking at your screens, you're just a couple of inches away. Our eyes aren't designed for that. And I've got videos about our eyes as well. And we're supposed to have distance. We're supposed to be looking at distance. So every day, if possible, like I have my computer right next to a huge glass wall of windows that look out into my woods, look out into my yard. And so I'm constantly looking out to get my eyes to keep focusing out there because it's not good. It's not good to be so close to something. We're not designed, and that's why we have eye problems because we're not designed to keep doing this. We're supposed to be looking out. It's miraculous. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, I think people really take for granted that, and that's a hard one because even if you're doing something like I like to read, and because it's like, oh, you're like, on some level you're doing all the good things, but it's like you're still right there. So I do try and go outside as well.
Yes.
And in terms of the light environment, I think that's something that makes such a huge difference. And it's so hard today because, you can put on your blue light blockers, but it's unless you're aware of it, most people don't have. Everyone has their ceiling light. They turn it on. Like most people aren't decking out their houses with red lights. But when you go to somewhere like the Maasai sleeping outside, and all of a sudden, you have a fire and the sun goes down, like you're ready to sleep.
It's unbelievable. So what I do at nighttime is I have candles. Because the red lights it's not the same thing. The flickering, it's the flickering of the fire. It's just mesmerizing. And so when I go to eat my dinner squatting, I have my candle and that's where I start. All my lights are coming down and the flickering of my fire, of my flames, of my candles. It's so ancestral. It's just, the more we can live ancestrally, guys, the better. And it's the best for your children. My girls were raised basically ancestrally, and they never missed a day of school. They never were sick. They never had an antibiotic. They lived ancestrally. They ate ancestrally. They drank ancestrally. they were profound in their health. And I remember the week my oldest daughter was going to graduate, and the superintendent called my classroom and he goes, Suze, the nurse just called me and she said, we have a student that's never missed a day of school, and it's your daughter. How can this be? Everyone gets sick. And I said, not if you live ancestrally. And he goes, can we put this in the newspaper? I said, God, I think it'd be great, And so it's our children, we should not be sick. We should not be sick. My medicine that I gave my children, if I felt they were coming down with something, was raw honey. I don't eat honey every day. I feel that that's a medicine for me. And the tribes don't eat every day. It's seasonal. It is not an everyday thing. Honey is not eaten every day. But for me, it's a medicine. I don't like a lot of sweets. I've never been able to handle sweet. And so it was always their medicine. I felt something was coming on. Give them a teaspoon. They're good. That's it. So
Have your kids continued to live relatively ancestrally?
They're doing the best they can. It's so hard because their jobs and where the people they associate with, it's so out of the realm. But they really are conscientious about keeping as much, eating as natural as possible, moving as much as possible. They're doing the best they can, and I'm just proud that they think this way. I'm very blessed.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's super cool to be able to like kind of try and like bestow like what you've learned onto your kids and like see how they've taken it into their kids and the next generation.
And my granddaughter, she's the same way. Oh, grandma, you're just, when I tell my friends at school, I've got this grandmother that, you're just like really, really rad, Thank you, honey.
Rad. That's awesome. So you mentioned one of these already, and this is something that like drives me insane, how we think that everyone up until, I don't know, 50 years ago lived to like they were 40 or like 30. And this is just couldn't be further from the truth. If you look at a lot of these tribes, and if you look at everyone before, the issue was that, and I'll address it, hopefully you have some points to add on to, is that historically in the US, people were very, very sick and didn't live that long on average because our diets were terrible. Like George Washington had no teeth. Like, these aren't healthy people, and it's not a surprise that they didn't live very long. But you also have people, I think Benjamin Franklin, I think Thomas Jefferson, they still live to like their 70s and 80s.
Absolutely.
And most people in the tribes are not, as long as they make it past out of like adulthood into their 18-year-olds, they're living till 70s, 80s, so probably just as long as we are.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's in most of the research, if you look at it, they're taking the average of the child, the birth. So any child that was lost at birth, or 1, 2, 3 years old, from it could be an animal, a predator. It could have been a disease, malaria, something. Took those young children, they average that age with everybody else, and it brings it to like a 45-year-old median, which is wrong, because that's so far from the truth. The tribes I'm living with, and I've talked to the elders who looked back at their family members who lived extremely long lives, extremely healthy lives. And in our book, The Ancestral Diet Revolution, we talk about this. We show the true ages of what these tribes were living to. And then to go and see it and hear it. And again, on live Instagrams, you can hear the elders talking about this. They live extremely long lives, and they're not in nursing homes. They don't believe in that. First of all, that's another important thing. They do not put their elders away. When you look at all generations, when I look at as a Native American, it's the same thing. They live within their clan, and they take care of each other. And the elders help to raise the children and to educate the children, to remind them of the wisdom that's been passed down from generation. We don't have that anymore. What I wouldn't give to have my children, I wish I could afford to buy acres and acres of land so that my daughters could all have their homes near me. And I could help to be there, as elders should be, to help raise their children and to educate them with the wisdom from our people. And this is what's missing in our society. We're just casting our elders away. They're no longer important. And then we put them in these homes, and they lose the will to live. And when I told the elders, this is what we do, they were shocked. They said, well, who would want to live knowing that you have no purpose? We have to have a purpose. From the day we're born, we have to be taught we have a purpose, and we work towards that. And as an elder, our purpose becomes not to continue to help the tribe to live, to tending to the land and hunting and gathering, but also help to raise the children. And to see the children, especially the Maasai, when they enter where the elders are, they bow their head so that their heads can be touched, to show that I'm honoring you as my elder and I revere you. It's so beautiful. We don't have this. I feel like the children, whatever, you know what I mean? Nowadays, to see, there's no respect anymore, but the respect was profound, profound, Ty. I could go on and on. It's just, it's life altering.
Yeah, that's something I completely agree with. But what, and I have no idea. So, what do you think is driving that change in our society? Like, why do you think we've lost that?
I'll tell you. When I was teaching, I started teaching in the late '80s. Children were like we were when I was a little girl in the '60s growing up. we were like the tribe. We were like the tribe. You know, we were out playing all the time, and you respected your elders. You never talked back. You had chores. You know, this is what life was. And this is how it was when I started teaching in the late '80s. By 10 years before I retired about 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago. Before I retired, about 10 years, that's when my classroom became inundated with technology. The iPads, the computers, everything started taking over. And the children at their homes, that was also taking over. And the children all of a sudden became like zombies. It was breaking my heart. I was like, so I would tell my parents, I was so blessed every year with the most amazing families. We became so close because I had what was called the healthy classroom. It was ancestral. There would be no processed food. Their snacks that they would bring in would be natural food from the earth. Our parties that we would have, all natural food. There would be no processed foods. And even the bus drivers would say, we always knew who your students were because they were so respectful and they were so quiet and so calm. They weren't bouncing off the walls from all the processed food. And even the children who are like me, ADHD or autistic and so forth, when they would change their diet, they would be so calm, so at peace. When they knew they were so loved, they knew I would just love them so much. They knew I gave them eye contact. I wasn't always on. When your parents are on cell phones or on their TVs or on their computers all the time, and just, I'll talk with you later. The message it's sending to the children. The children would come and tell me, and I had a rocking chair in my classroom. I'd hold them. They said, no one rocks me. I've never been rocked before until you, Miss Alexander. No one sings to them. But this is what's done in the tribes. It's what my parents did with me. I was always rocked, always held. My father always was rocking me. And they do this. The children are so important to them. But our children, I just feel like they're just kind of, go here, look at this phone and just let that raise you. Here's an important piece. My students 30 years ago, they knew how to use their tongue. They knew how to speak. They knew what a T was. They knew what a V was. They knew what an F was. They knew what, but now the children are no one's talking to them. They're seeing a screen. They're just playing games. When they come to school in my classroom, many of them had not had enough contact with a human. They didn't know when I would teach them words, teach them how to read. This is what the V is. They didn't know what to do with their mouth. So I had to teach them all over again. And so parents, please put phones down. Please don't start your children on social media. It's a detriment to their being. They're seeing things they should not be seeing. They're understanding the transgender, all these things that the tribes, and I know this is a very sensitive subject, but it's the truth. It does not exist in the tribes. We talked about this extensively on many of the live chats. The tribes didn't know what I was talking about. I described it to them. They were like, what? How can this be? A man is a man and a woman is a woman. This is what it is. How can this be? But when you're confused at an early age, a 2, 3, 4-year-old and is seeing things that they should not see, it's causing them to think things they shouldn't be thinking. And then they wouldn't have this problem. And so this is, again, it's so tribal. It's so human. It's what we're subjected to. And we need to take this away and step back. And we need to understand that their little fragile minds can only handle so much. They need to have their parents, their families, their grandmas and grandpas in their lives, raising them, teaching them, not a program, not an app. It's important. And the same thing in the classroom. They need the teacher to teach them, not an app. Put the iPads down. Teach them. Let's get back to the old days.
What else do you think culturally we could really learn from them other than the importance of family and the elders?
Oh, it's just, I mean, even the way they dress, you know, in the male and the female. The men are so masculine, so masculine. The women are so feminine, and yet they're strong. But they have their roles. And I know that people who are feminists and so forth, I was a single parent. I raised my children since they were little tiny girls by myself. And I had to be both the mother and the father. It was very difficult for me because I couldn't always be my feminine. And I think that we're missing that in our world. I think that we are so. I don't have a TV. This is another important thing. I took the TV out of my home 20 years ago, and my girls they're growing up, and it was a big thing. But I said to them one night we were watching, and it was just so. The women were talking down to the men, and the families were belittling him, belittling the father. I looked at my daughters. And I said, "This is so wrong." I said, "My gosh," I said, "I would never invite these people into my home. Why are we inviting them in on our TV?" And I said, "Girls, let's just give it a try. Let's see what life is like without a TV." I would never turn back. We were able to go and do so much more with our time instead of sitting in front of this tube, you know, this teaching us things that we don't need to know. And we lived and we had such a wonderful life. And they don't have TVs. And so they spend their life living. They live for the moment. They aren't worried about what's going to happen tomorrow. What am I going to do 10 years from now? They live, they are getting everything out of life for that moment. But also, and it's the way they dress. The men look like, you know, they've got their spears, and you know, I'm not saying we all have carry our spears, but they're protecting. This is their job. I'm here to protect you and to provide for you. And the woman is to raise the children, to have a home, you know, to go out and tend and get the firewood and to have everything ready. It's a beautiful, loving existence. There's no hostility. There's no jealousy. There's no bitterness. There's no anger. I can't tell you that it's a sense of peace that they have in their life from the moment they get up. Oh, and this is another beautiful thing. Every morning, so I crawl out of my tent, the sun's coming up, and you see, I mean, I'm going to cry. You see all these Maasai coming out of their huts, looking so beautiful, so regal, and they're just so tall and just so beautiful. And they're coming together. All the men come together, and all the women come together, and they're talking. How are you? How was your night? You matter. You matter. Then they go and they get their cattle and they tend and they're doing all their chores, but they're always together. Somehow they're with each other all the time. Then at nighttime, they all come back together again and they all dine together because in the morning, they're all going from hut to hut, drinking their chai tea, which is milk, raw milk that's been boiled with some water and the root, the bark, and the branches. They'll drink liters of this. And that's their breakfast. And they don't have any lunch. Then they'll have dinner, which is usually more milk, or if they do a slaughter, that would be their dinner. And but again, and then they come together. They're always watching out for each other, and that's how they end their night. Is just tending to each other. How are you taking? Sleep well. Remember, I care about you. I'll see you in the morning. And then they all go to their huts, and it starts all over again. It was unbelievable. It was saying that Haadza were very similar, but in a more, you know, hunter-gatherer way, you know, but it was just profound. It was just, and the animals are everywhere. Of course, I love animals, and they're just everywhere. They're around your tent. They're just, their dogs are part of them. They're packs of dogs and so forth. I can't tell you. And yes, it's the stress on me in terms of fear, because you don't know if a cobra or a python, you're out there in the bush by yourself, is going to get you, or these, you know, one night I went into my tent and I didn't know there was this insect called the Nairobi fly. Never heard of it. So I get up in the morning, I got this big burn all over my lip. I'm like, what is this? And Ty's like, oh no, the Nairobi fly. I'm like, what is it? He goes, well, if you must have been sleeping, it probably got on you and you wiped it away. He goes, it's got like an acid that comes out of it. And that's how it protects itself. And he goes, and so the acid that took a long time to heal. So you just don't know from moment to the next. That stressor was for me, but they don't experience that stress because it's part of their life. You're born into this and you don't think about it. We had one night where the hyenas came and tore right next to my tent, our supply tent, and ripped it. Of course, I thought he was killing Mateo and Tembo and Minetto. It sounded like it was the most vicious sounding thing. And I'm screaming in my tent. And they're saying, don't come out, stay in there. What's going on? It was frightening. But I should know, they're Maasai. They know what they're doing. They know how to get rid of hyenas. But it was very frightening. But it destroyed our tent and took all of the meat that was in the tent. But so it's an amazing existence. And I would give up everything that I have. You don't have a shower. You have no water. You just wash with a little bit of water that you have. That's why they shave their heads, because they don't have to wash their hair. It's just most beautiful to experience what being a human is all about. So I think the most important thing is to think about some of the things I've mentioned, and if we can implement those into our lives, especially our children, and teach them what it means to be human. We've forgotten, because we are an amazing species, and we need to feed our body not just food, but all these other components, because there's so many pillars, and it really matters. Each one has a powerful impact on our living and how we live and how long we live.
So if you were to summarize it up, the Suzanne Alexander keynote, what does it mean to be a human?
To be as primal as possible. To remove as much of what humans have made life to make it simple for us. Yes, it's lovely to have a shower. I will say, when I took my first hot shower, it was just like, oh my gosh, it was beautiful. And I do love to take my shower. But stop being so clean. It's wonderful to be dirty. Allow your children to become dirty. A lot of diseases like muscular MS, research is saying it's because people are not getting dirty. Many of it, especially, and also sunlight. So we have a lot of people here near Syracuse. We live in a very dark region, very cold, dark, and rainy and snowy. And we have a lot of people with MS here. Why? Because of our climate. We're not outside a lot. So we need to get outside. Be a human. Crawl. I know it sounds goofy, but I'm out crawling in my yard, and my neighbors just know, there she is crawling. Yeah, there she is. I'm out crawling around. I'm squatting. I'm climbing trees. I hang from trees. It's part of who we are. Think about this. If you are so overweight or so out of shape and you can't climb a tree to protect yourself, and I know we don't have to worry about predators, but it's part of being human. And that, to me, at 63 years old, I can climb a tree really fast. I can hang from trees, upside down. I'm all over the trees, because if I were living ancestrally, I could protect myself, because that's part of being human. So just kind of incorporate anything you can every day. Get up with the sun, turn the lights down at night as the sun is setting. Get out and see the sun setting, see the sun rising. Walk with your family, walk. Do body exercise. If you don't have a gym, do a lot of I do push-ups. I'm constantly jumping to the floor and doing push-ups. I've got my kettlebells. I've got my wheel over here for my aunt. I'm always taking minutes. I have a gym in my basement, which I love. But I've got logs, huge logs in my yard that I carry, and they're very heavy. I'll carry them like this. I'll do my curls with them. I put them on my back. I do my squats. They're amazing what they do. I have rocks, and I carry them, and I go into a squat and so forth. You're always moving. You can get an amazing workout just having a couple logs and rocks in your yard and just carrying them around every day, just moving. Have your children doing the same thing, tending to our land. Eat as natural as you possibly can. Guys, I know people say, but I can't afford pastured meat. I can't afford those. Then buy what you can in the store, the best you can afford. Ground beef. That's what most of my girls are mostly doing with the ground beef for them, because it's cheaper, it's easier. And it's also, you're going to get more of the tenderness, cartilage, and all the things that actually have better nutrients in that. You're actually getting bigger bang for the buck then. And drink water. If you can get spring water, that's great. Remove plastics as much as you can from your life. Plastics are so dangerous. I mean, the research on plastics alone, it's horrible. And again, don't be so clean. Get out and get dirty. Don't have to keep washing your hands all the time. Build that gut microbiome. It's not just in the food. It's also in everything else. If you have pets, it's wonderful, because pets are also building our microbiome as well. And tend to the pets as well. Cats are carnivores. Dogs are basically carnivores. Don't feed them vegan diets. That's not healthy. Wonder why their teeth are falling out. Wonder why they're getting diabetes, why they're getting cancers. They're getting all human diseases. It's not natural. And the diseases we have are not natural. The tribes are disease-free. They do not have cancer. They do not have Alzheimer's. They do not have heart disease. And oh, that's another thing, Ty. I'm trying to get everything in really quickly. With the Maasai, back in the 60s, they did autopsies on 50 hearts from the Maasai. They did have plaque buildup. There was plaque buildup. Their saving grace was, and this is, again, speculation from the scientists who researched this, because their arteries are so much wider than ours. They believe it's because they move so much. You're walking 12, 15, 20 miles a day. You're lifting and doing all of these chores all day long. It widens the arteries. So therefore, any clogging, any artery, any calcification or any plaque buildup in their arteries wasn't closing off like a typical American who's sedentary and has smaller arteries. Also, we believe because of the plants that they're consuming, which are lowering cholesterol, removing, cleansing their arteries as well, they have that benefit, which we aren't, especially if people are saying, take out plants, don't consume plants. These plants can save our lives. And so I'm going to be sharing over the next couple of weeks these plants that we can incorporate into our life, that we have very similar, that will do the same things that we need to start incorporating. Plants are not trying to kill us. Some can, but some plants will save our lives. And it's evident because that's why the tribes are still alive, because the plants have saved their lives as well as their lifestyle and food. So that's my take.
Thank you. It was awesome. What do you think is the main killer of the people in the tribes? Because everyone has to die from something. So like, to me, it's always been like the problem with the disease epidemic that we're going through today is that we're getting it too young. We're all going to die of something. So like if it's cancer, if it's Alzheimer's, whatever it is, like if we're getting it at 90, probably not that big of a deal. Obviously it'd be nice to not get that and, just pass away in our sleep. But so what's actually happening with the tribes?
Those that die early, if it's child, again, it's childbirth or malaria, it could be predators, a snake bite, anything like that can kill you. It can be parasites. Could be parasites can kill us. But most of the time with the tribes, if you can make it out of childhood, survive all of those things, probably malaria is a very big thing. It's, now also because the land is being removed from them, there's not a lot of water. They're just not getting the nutrients. And so could it be that they're drinking subpar water that is also going to be causing, if they're going and drinking tainted water, because they're being moved now and they're being moved to where chemicals are leaching into water. These are new diseases, new problems. They're struggling because of ugali. They're noticing more diseases because they're eating food they're not used to. So now the tribes are going to experience new diseases and new illnesses that they're not used to. And many of them are starting to add in the processed food, and that's going to be a downfall.
What about like the elders though, the ones that do make it to 80, 90?
Yeah.
What do you think they're dying of?
They're mostly dying in their sleep. And I asked them, I said, so what is the disease? What's taking your life? And they said, we mostly die in our sleep. I said, wow. I said, you don't notice something going on? And they said, most of the elders, the ones that have died in their sleep, they may have said that they weren't feeling well, that something was not right, but it wasn't like a long-term thing, like a cancer. They don't have cancer. They don't have breast cancer. They don't have these things. I think there's a possibility. Is it strokes? Is it a stroke that they're having in the middle of the night? Probably something like that would be taking their life. Because, or a heart attack. It's, instant myocardial infarction, bang, it's gone. Because they just die in their sleep. So, and the men and women sleep in different areas. They don't really sleep together. So no one's right there in your bed to tell you what I witnessed, because they're not really together. They kind of live separate lives.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah. But maybe that's why it works, because the snoring is all, I don't know. I'm kind of making lighthearted here. But I think that probably in the end, that this is what there probably is happening. Those are really the old men and the women that you're seeing, that you can see on my live Instagrams. They're so healthy, and I can't picture one of the men. He was in his 90s, and he was saying how he had been put in the hospital, because some of them are actually going to the hospital now. And he said, and it sounds like he had a stroke. The symptoms, and you'll hear me saying that, it sounds like he was describing a stroke. And he said he couldn't remember things. I said, that's a stroke. It's a stroke. And he goes, but I could remember to say I wanted clot milk. It's the soured milk. And he said, and I kept saying, I need clot milk. I need clot milk. And he goes, so the tribe went and he brought him clot milk. And they finally said, we need to take him home. We need to get him out of here, this hospital. We got to get him out of the hospital. And within days, he was back to walking. And you see him now. I mean, he was on the video. I mean, walking 12, 15 miles, and he goes, once I got that clot milk in, he goes, and the soups and things that they're drinking, he goes, I was fine, but it sounded like he had a stroke. And that's what I think it was. So that's I'm thinking, Ty, that's what be in the end, when you get to 80s, 90s, 100s, it would be something like that, because they're not having cancer. They're not having, the typical things that we're having.
As far as it goes, it's a pretty good way to go out.
Yes, it's quick,
Yeah.
And I hope, if I'm going to go, I hope that's how I go, I mean, I want to be able to say goodbye, but if you can't, we just say goodbye every day. Whenever you go to bed, it's I do to my girls. I always say, I love you. We're not together. I love you, because we don't know. We don't know. So.
That's awesome. Okay, I got two last questions, one fun one, and then one more serious one.
Okay.
So you've lived all over the world. You visited all these tribes. If you could just, redo Suzanne and pack up and go permanently move into one of these tribes, which would it be and why?
The Maasai.
Okay.
because I just, first of all, Mateo. My guides were Maasai, except my chef was not a Maasai, but my driver and Mateo, Tembo and Mateo, they were Maasai. And then we lived, so much of my time was with the Maasai. And eventually they said that they want me to come back so they can adopt me. So I'll become the white Maasai, and I'll be adopted into the Letyat family. And I just, they're I mean, yes, I know a lot of people say yes, but it's so different that the women, how that the women are treated differently, and the women, but yet there was such love. The love that they just exudes from them. The men were so willing to allow me to go to their slaughter camps, which women are normally not allowed to do. And they were teaching me, and the women just took me under. They were just clothing me, and I looked just like a Maasai. I was wearing their shukas and all their jewelry, and even on my legs here. Hold on, let me get off my squat here. Hold on. Okay, hold on. So even my jewelry. See, they sewed right onto my legs.
Oh,
so
wow.
they sew these right on, and so I've got them on my legs, and I've got all my jewelry that I usually wear, and it's just you become one with them. I did with all the tribes, even in the Pacific Islands. I love them all, but I bonded, and I just felt like, in my whole life, I've always thought I was Maasai. I studied them my whole life. My grandmother didn't live with the Maasai; she lived with different tribes. But I've always revered the Maasai, and they just. And my body, I'm very built like a Maasai, because I have a lot more muscle than they do. But I'm very tall and thin and lean, and I just they're how they live one with nature. That's why they're pastoralists. They don't want to kill animals. And so people think, but they're slaughtering. But they don't, they mostly live off of milk. The milk, and that's what they say. We can live off of their milk. We're not killing an animal. And so they really don't want to take animals, and they don't want to hunt wild animals, because they believe that those belong in the world, and they don't want to take from the world. They will kill lions if they're attacking, someone is attacking. But the Maasai would be my choice. Yeah,
that's insane to think about them just killing a lion. But,
and Mateo has killed a lion. He's my warrior.
Got to be some good stories about that one.
Yeah. So listen today. I might have a live Instagram with him today at 3, so you can ask all those questions. He'll convey them all.
We'll have to hop on. Okay, so last question. Let's take specifically the Haadza.
Mm-hmm.
What would it take to save them? And if applicable, a lot of these other hunter-gatherer tribes, or not hunter-gatherers, but these primal tribes.
Thank you for this question. This is one of my missions, and I'm very, very good friends with the chief of all the Maasai in Tanzania and Kenya. His name is Chief Old Tendo, and we talk a lot. And I said, what can we do? How can we save the tribes? And he said, we have to have many voices. And he says, if you can generate voices all over the world that can help stand up for us, to stop our land from being removed, and that to prevent us from living ancestrally, we will survive. But he said, right now, he said, we need to be able to help us to have the money to be able to build wells, drill wells near their villages, so that they can have clean water, They don't have to keep walking miles and miles, or maybe not find water at all, especially in the summer months of August, September, October, November, where it's so dry. There's nothing. And that's where their animals die and the people are starving. It's awful. If we could also, and I've already doing this, I purchased solar lights from my own pocket and panels to put on Mateo's hut. We were trying this because the hyenas and the predators have been killing all the animals and nothing was working. And so I said, well, let's put some lights out there that will make it so that they can't come. Maybe the lights will scare them away. And it's working. It's working. So I would love to be able to afford to put little small solar panels on their huts so they can have some lights to stop the killing from the predators of their animals. So they don't have to keep trying to afford to buy more animals when they're killed. They can't afford these things. They don't have the money. And education. If their land is going to be taken away, which it already is, and it's every day, the chief tells me, more have been evacuated, more have been evicted, and they have no place to go. They're just moving them, get out. He said, education. He said, we're going to have to get jobs now. We're not used to this. We're just used to living to survive on the land. And if we're going to have to move and to go pay for apartments that we've never had and all these things, he goes, we don't have education. And so he said to help us to get their schools. Now, the schools that they do have, the children told me, they're being beaten, they're being flogged. That's how they teach them, they have fear. It's like back in the old days, in the United States, they used to be able to have corporal punishment and spankings. And so they do this. And I said, oh my God, we have to change the educational system. I would just love to be able to just revamp things. And there's so much we can do, but we have to be a voice to stand up for the tribes and to say, this is unacceptable because we're going to lose them. This is how I'm able to see them. I've researched these people, all of these tribes for over 50 years. And it's not what I researched. It is not at all. When you go and live with them, that's not what it said. This is not at all what I researched. It's totally different here. This is not it. We're losing them. And if we lose this is our history to where we should be back to doing as much as we can. And we're going to forget what being a human is all about. And then we will become extinct because we're going to end up dying from all these other diseases because of what we're creating. We can prevent all of this by all working together, learning from the tribes, keeping them alive, helping them to thrive. And with the Haadza, the same thing. Allow them to have hunting grounds where they can continue. The people who have left can come back. Bring those 400 people back where they can keep having their children and growing and growing. We're going to lose them. We have to educate them and teach them. We've got to help them.
Do you think it's a possibility for them to come to an agreement with the government to, sort of how we have with the Native Americans have their own
I was
land?
just talking with the chief about this. I said, Chief, what can we do? And he goes, I said, I believe with God, we can do anything. With God, we can do it. And he said, I believe. And they are Christians. Most of them are Christians. So anyone who's asking, most of them have become Christians.
Polygamous Christians. Interesting.
Yeah. But the new, like Mateo, the young ones they're not thinking, they're becoming more monogamous because of the Christian beliefs that they're being taught. So they're becoming more monogamous. But anyway, but Haadza, I think with them that and the chief said this, with all the tribes, if he believes with all his heart and soul, if we can come together and put a stand against the government to say this is unacceptable, their land cannot be taken. It's greed. Again, it's the disease of greed. They want to be able to have more tourism. They want to build more, tourist traps. They want to be able to have more agricultural growing with pesticides and all of the, GMOs and everything, becoming just like we are. But they're taking their land and they're killing off these indigenous tribes. And we have to, I believe, with mass amounts of people, and if we can also help to bring money in to maybe help to afford attorneys, they can go in and say, this is illegal. It's unethical. I think we can stop it. I believe with all my heart we can do this. I do. And I would love to have people contact me. I'm mostly on Instagram, guys. I'm mostly on Instagram. Contact me and give me ideas. I want us to all work together. It's not just me. I'm an independent researcher now. I've gone on my own. I'm paying for everything out of my life savings and my pension. And I just feel if we can all join together and say, let's join together and save our history of who humans are. And I think we can do it. I believe with all my heart we can do this. I do. And Ty, thank you. You're part of my team. Thank you.
I'm glad to be part of the team. But yeah, thank you very much for taking the time, Suze. This was Awesome. I hope everyone enjoys this, and really appreciate you for doing all the work. And hopefully, we can, do what's necessary to save those, the tribes and preserve their beautiful history.
Thank you.
Till next time, guys. Get